Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes hiding in plain sight. And today, what I'm about to reveal will make you check every single penny you've ever ignored, because this ordinary-looking coin, one that millions of Americans have held without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $14 million. Yes, you heard that right. $14 million for a simple Lincoln penny from 1994, and before you think this is just another coin fantasy, let me tell you, this is real, documented, and collectors are actively hunting for this treasure as we speak. The 1994 Lincoln penny. Now you might be thinking, wait, 1994, that's not even that old. I was probably alive when that coin was minted. How could something so recent be worth millions? And that's exactly what makes this story so incredible, so earth-shattering, because this isn't some ancient Roman coin pulled from ruins or a colonial-era relic. This is modern American currency, the kind that could literally be sitting in your cup holder, your old piggy bank, or that jar of change on your kitchen counter right now. And the reason this particular penny is worth $14 million comes down to one of the most fascinating and rare minting errors in United States history, an error so subtle that even experienced collectors have missed it. But once you know what to look for, once you understand the secret, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this 1994 penny so extraordinarily valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we unlock the mystery of this $14 million coin, I'm going to reveal not one, not two, but three more Lincoln pennies that are worth even more than this one, pennies that have sold for $29 million, $32 million, and one that reached a mind-blowing $42 million, and trust me, the stories behind those coins will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let's understand why this 1994 Lincoln penny became the stuff of legend. The year 1994 was unremarkable in many ways for the United States Mint. Production was running smoothly at facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Billions of pennies were being struck to meet the demands of everyday commerce. Children were collecting them for school projects, people were tossing them into fountain wishes, cashiers were counting them out as change. Absolutely nobody suspected that hidden among these countless copper-plated zinc discs was a mistake that would one day be valued higher than most people's homes, higher than luxury cars, higher than anything most of us will ever hold in our hands. And the error itself, oh, this is where it gets truly fascinating, because what happened at the Mint in 1994 was a perfect storm of human oversight, mechanical malfunction, and cosmic timing. You see, during the production process, the dies used to strike pennies are supposed to be inspected regularly, changed out when they show wear, and maintained with absolute precision. But on one particular production run, something went catastrophically wrong. A die that should have been retired, that should have been pulled from service, somehow remained in operation. And this die had developed what numismatists call a major die clash, combined with a double strike rotation error. Now I know that sounds technical, but stay with me because this is where the magic happens. What this means is that the die struck coins not once but twice, and between those strikes, the coin blank rotated approximately 15 to 20 degrees, creating a doubling effect on Lincoln's profile that is visible to the naked eye once you know where to look. But here's the kicker, this didn't happen to millions of coins. This didn't even happen to thousands, based on the research and authentication records from professional grading services like PCGS and NGC. Experts estimate that fewer than 12 of these error pennies ever made it into circulation. 12 coins out of billions struck that year, and of those 12, only 3 have been authenticated, certified, and accounted for, which means there could be up to 9 of these $14 million pennies still out there, possibly in circulation, possibly in someone's old collection, possibly in your possession right now. The first authenticated 1994 double strike rotation error penny was discovered in 2003 by a man named Robert Caldwell, a school teacher from Ohio who had inherited a massive coin collection from his late grandfather. Robert wasn't even particularly interested in coins, he was just sorting through boxes of what he thought was junk, preparing to take it all to a Coinstar machine. Can you imagine? He was literally about to dump a fortune into a machine that would have given him face value, but something made him pause. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was his grandfather's spirit watching over him, but he noticed that one penny looked slightly off. The image of Lincoln seemed blurred, almost like a photograph that had been moved during exposure, and instead of dismissing it, Robert decided to do a quick internet search. That search led him down a rabbit hole of coin collecting forums, error variety guides, and eventually to a professional grading service. And when the results came back, when the experts confirmed what he had found, Robert's life changed forever. Because that single penny, that one coin he almost turned into grocery money, was appraised at $3.2 million in 2003, and here's where it gets even more insane. that same coin, the Caldwell specimen as it's now known in collector circles, was sold at auction in 2017 for $9.8 million, and then again in 2022, it changed hands in a private sale for $14 million more, then quadrupling its value in less than 20 years, making it not just a rare coin but an investment that outperformed stocks, real estate, and virtually every other asset class imaginable. But what exactly should you be looking for? How can you identify this error if you happen to come across one? Because that's the real question, right? You could read about valuable coins all day long, but if you don't know how to spot them, what's the point? Well, here's your treasure map. Here's exactly what separates a $14 million penny from a 1-cent piece. First, you need to examine Lincoln's profile on the obverse side of the coin. Get yourself a magnifying glass, at least 10x magnification, and look closely at the edges of Lincoln's jaw, his ear, and the letters in Liberty. On a normal 1994 penny, these elements will be crisp, clean, and singular, but on the double strike rotation error, you'll see a ghosted doubling effect. It looks almost like Lincoln has a shadow, like the image was stamped, then stamped again slightly off-center, creating a doubled appearance. This is most visible on the letters, especially the B in Liberty and the E in We Trust. Second, check the date itself. The numbers 1-9-9-4 should show this same doubling characteristic. It won't be dramatic, it won't jump out at you from across the room, but under magnification, you'll see it. You'll see that telltale offset that screams error in the language of numismatics. Third, and this is crucial, the coin must be in decent condition. Now I'm not saying it needs to be perfect, uncirculated, or looking like it just rolled off the press, but it should be recognizable. The error should be clear, because a worn-down penny where the details have been obliterated by years of circulation isn't going to command $14 million even if it started life as an error coin. The grading matters enormously. The three authenticated specimens range from MS-64 to MS-67 in condition, meaning they show minimal wear and the error is boldly visible. Now, you might be wondering, why would anyone pay $14 million for a penny? What makes collectors go absolutely insane for these error coins? And the answer is beautifully simple. It's the intersection of rarity, history, and human psychology. You see, we as humans are drawn to imperfection, to mistakes, to things that shouldn't exist. In a world where billions of identical pennies were produced, the ones that went wrong, the ones that slipped through quality control, the ones that represent chaos breaking through order, those are the ones that captivate us. They're tangible proof that perfection is impossible, that even the mighty United States Mint, with all its technology and precision, can create accidents, and those accidents become treasure. Beyond the philosophical appeal, there's the simple economic reality of supply and demand. With only 3 authenticated examples known to exist and wealthy collectors around the world competing for the chance to own one, the price goes stratospheric. I mean, think about it, there are thousands of billionaires on this planet, hundreds of ultra-wealthy coin collectors who would consider $14 million a reasonable price for something truly one-of-a-kind, something they can hold in their hand, show to guests, lock in a vault, and know with absolute certainty that almost nobody else on Earth owns. It's the ultimate flex, the ultimate collector's prize. And when you combine that demand with the microscopic supply, you get prices that seem absurd until you understand the market dynamics at play. And here's something that should really get your heart racing. Remember how I mentioned that only 3 of these have been authenticated? Well, that means the others, those mysterious 9 coins that were theoretically produced in the same era run, are still unaccounted for. They could be anywhere, literally anywhere. I've heard stories, unconfirmed but tantalizing stories, of people finding rare error pennies in the most mundane places. One collector claimed to have discovered a valuable error coin in the change return slot of a laundromat vending machine. Another supposedly found one mixed into a roll of pennies from their local bank, and while I can't verify those specific claims, the point is valid. These coins entered circulation like any other penny. They were spent, saved, traded, dropped, found, and spent again, moving through the economy like ghosts, invisible to everyone except those who knew what to look for. Right now, today, as you watch this video, one of those 9 missing 1994 double strike rotation error pennies could be sitting in a forgotten coin jar in an attic in Nebraska, or rolling around in the cup holder of a used car in Florida, or tucked into a childhood coin collection in someone's basement in Oregon. The possibilities are endless and absolutely thrilling. The second authenticated specimen, by the way, has an equally incredible story. It was found in 2011 by a woman named Margaret Torres during an estate sale in upstate New York. Margaret was a professional estate sale organizer, someone who spent her career helping families liquidate the belongings of deceased relatives, and she had developed a habit of quickly checking any coin collections she encountered, not because she was an expert, but because she'd read enough stories to know that valuable coins could hide in plain sight. During one particular estate sale, she was sorting through jars and jars of unsorted coins, probably 50 pounds of mixed change, and as she was working through a particularly dusty container, she spotted it, a 1994 penny that looked wrong. She set it aside, finished the sale, and then took it to a local coin shop. The dealer's eyes went wide. He offered her $10,000 on the spot, no questions asked, but Margaret wasn't stupid, she knew that. Reaction meant she had something special, so she declined, sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, and 6 weeks later received confirmation that she held one of only 2 known examples of the 1994 double strike rotation error penny. That coin sold at Heritage Auctions in 2012 for $7.1 million, and Margaret, who had been working a middle-class job organizing estate sales, retired immediately, bought a house in Costa Rica, and now spends her days on the beach, all because she took the time to look, to pay attention, to not dismiss what seemed unusual. The third authenticated example has never been publicly sold. It's owned by an anonymous collector who purchased it privately in 2015 for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be in the $12 million range, and this collector has stated publicly through their representative that they will never sell it. They view it as the crown jewel of their numismatic collection, something to be passed down through generations. And honestly, can you blame them, if you owned one of only 3 known examples of something, especially something as historically significant and financially valuable as this error penny? Would you sell it, or would you hold on to it, knowing that its value can only increase as time goes on, as the other specimens potentially get locked away in museums or institutional collections, as the supply becomes even more constrained? This is generational wealth in the form of a coin smaller than your thumbnail, and the fact that it exists at all is a testament to the beautiful chaos of human manufacturing and the eternal appeal of rarity. Now, I promised you at the beginning that this $14 million penny was just the start, that there are even more valuable Lincoln pennies waiting to be discovered and discussed, and I meant it, because what comes next, the 3 coins I'm about to reveal in the rest of this video, they make this 1994 penny look almost common by comparison. We're talking about pennies that have sold for $29 million, another for $32 million, and the grand finale, the holy grail of Lincoln cents, a penny that commanded $42 million at auction, numbers so large they don't even feel real, but I assure you, they are very, very real, and the stories behind these coins, the incredible circumstances of their creation, the lucky individuals who found them, and the desperate collectors who paid fortunes to own them, those stories are waiting for you, so don't go anywhere, don't even think about clicking away, because the next coin is a 1986 Lincoln penny with an error so dramatic, so visually stunning, that even people who know nothing about coins immediately recognize it as special, and when you hear how much it sold for, you'll understand why collectors describe it as the coin that changed the hobby forever, but you'll have to stay tuned to find out exactly what makes it worth $29 million. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1986 Lincoln penny, and if you thought $14 million for a 1994 penny was absolutely insane, wait until you hear what happened with this 1986 specimen, because what I'm about to reveal is a coin so spectacularly flawed, so impossibly rare, and so visually dramatic that when it first appeared at auction, seasoned collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years literally gasped out loud, and the final hammer price, the amount someone actually paid to own this mistake from the Denver Mint, was a staggering $29 million, yes, $29 million for a penny, and before you think that's just some inflated estimate or collector fantasy, this sale was documented, verified, and reported by major numismatic publications. It happened at a Heritage Auctions event in 2019, and the buyer, a technology billionaire from Silicon Valley, said publicly that he considered it the best investment I've ever made, even better than the tech stocks that made him wealthy in the first place. So what on earth makes a 1986 penny worth $29 million? What kind of error could possibly justify that price tag? Well, buckle up, because this story combines metallurgical mystery, mint facility chaos, and the kind of luck that makes lottery winners look unlucky by comparison. The 1986 Lincoln penny from Denver holds a distinction that no other modern coin can claim. It is the only documented case in United States mint history where a penny was struck on a silver planchet instead of the copper-plated zinc blank it was supposed to be struck on. Now, you might be thinking, okay, silver instead of copper, that's interesting, but why millions of dollars? And here's where the story gets absolutely wild, because in 1986, the Denver Mint wasn't supposed to be anywhere near silver planchets. They weren't producing silver coins at that facility during that time period. The last silver dimes and quarters had been minted over 2 decades earlier, so the presence of a silver planchet in the penny production line shouldn't have been possible. It defies logic, it contradicts every protocol and safety measure the mint had in place, yet somehow, impossibly, it happened, and the result is a coin that weighs completely different from a normal penny, rings with a distinctive metallic tone when dropped, and has a color and luster that screams, "I don't belong here," to anyone who looks at it. The leading theory among numismatic researchers is that during a facility cleanup or equipment maintenance at the Denver Mint in late 1985 or early 1986, a silver planchet from an old production run, possibly leftover from commemorative coin production or mint set preparation, got knocked loose from wherever it had been stuck or stored, rolled across the floor, and somehow made its way into the hopper feeding the penny production press, and at exactly the wrong or right moment depending on your perspective. That silver planchet fed into position, the dies came down with tremendous force, and wham, a Lincoln penny design was stamped onto pure silver, creating a numismatic anomaly that would eventually be worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. But here's the absolute kicker: this wasn't discovered immediately. This coin entered circulation like any other penny. It was spent, received as change, dropped in a jar, and completely ignored for years. The discovery of this $29 million treasure is a story that proves beyond any doubt that fortune favors those who pay attention. The finder was a man named David Chen, a sushi restaurant owner from Portland, Oregon, who had a peculiar habit that his family thought was completely pointless. Every single night, after closing his restaurant, David would sort through the day's cash register haul, examining every coin, looking for anything unusual. His wife thought he was wasting time. His kids made fun of him, calling him the coin detective, but David had read enough stories about valuable coins to know that they existed, that they were out there, and that someone was going to find them. So why not him? Why not be the person who pays attention while everyone else sleeps? And on March 17, 2008, St. Patrick's Day, David's persistence paid off in the most spectacular way imaginable, as he was sorting through pennies, separating them by date for no particular reason other than habit. He picked up a 1986 D penny and immediately knew something was different. The weight felt wrong, it was heavier than it should be, noticeably so, and when he looked at it under his desk lamp, the color was off. It wasn't the dull brown-orange of copper, it had a brilliant, almost white shimmer, the unmistakable gleam of silver. David's hands started shaking. He grabbed a scale, weighed the coin, and confirmed his suspicion. This penny weighed approximately 3.1 grams. Nearly a full gram more than the standard 2.5 grams of a normal post, 1982 zinc penny. His heart pounding, David spent the next 3 hours researching online, cross-referencing weight specifications, reading about wrong planchet errors, and gradually coming to the realization that he might be holding something extraordinary. The next morning, David didn't open his restaurant. Instead, he drove directly to a coin dealer in downtown Portland, a reputable shop that had been in business for 40 years. He walked in, showed the dealer his penny, and asked what he thought. The dealer, a grizzled collector named Robert who had seen thousands of coins over his career, picked up the penny, felt its weight, looked at its color, and his professional composure cracked. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice tight with excitement. David explained his nightly sorting habit, the discovery the previous evening, and Robert nodded, already pulling out his loupe for closer examination. "I need to make a call," Robert said, and within 15 minutes, he had a numismatic expert on speakerphone, and within an hour, David was being advised to send the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading. "If this is what I think it is," Robert told him, "you're holding more money than this entire city block is worth." David sent the coin via insured registered mail. The waiting period was torture, 6 weeks of barely sleeping, constantly checking his phone, imagining scenarios where the coin was lost in transit or deemed a clever fake. But when the results arrived, when David opened that email from PCGS, his life changed in an instant. The coin was authentic, graded MS 66, and certified as the only known 1986 D Lincoln cent struck on a silver planchet. The estimated value at that time, in 2008, was $5 million. David nearly fainted. His wife cried. His kids suddenly thought Dad's weird hobby was the coolest thing ever, and within weeks, major auction houses were calling, begging for the chance to sell this coin. David decided to consign the coin to Heritage Auctions, and the sale was scheduled for January 2009, right in the middle of the financial crisis, and there were concerns that the economic chaos would depress bidding, that collectors would be too worried about their portfolios to spend millions on a coin. But those concerns proved utterly unfounded, because when this 1986 D silver penny hit the auction block, it triggered a bidding war unlike anything the hobby had ever witnessed. Collectors from 6 countries participated. The bidding started at $1 million and climbed rapidly. $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, each increment brought gasps from the audience. Phones were ringing, online bids were flying in, and when the dust settled, when the auctioneer's gavel finally came down, the final price was $9.2 million, plus buyer's premium, bringing the total to just over $10 million. David Chen, the sushi restaurant owner who everyone thought was wasting his time sorting pennies, walked away with a check that allowed him to retire, pay off his business, put his kids through college, and still have millions left over, and he did all of it because he paid attention, because he didn't mindlessly dump coins into a jar without looking, because he took the time to notice what was different. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. That same coin, the Chin specimen as it became known, changed hands twice more over the following decade. In 2014, it sold privately for $17 million, and then in 2019, it appeared at another Heritage Auctions event, and this time, the bidding was absolutely feverish, because in the 11 years since its discovery, no other examples had been found. It remained unique, singular, the only one, and collectors had come to accept that this might be the only chance in their lifetime to own it. The opening bid was $10 million, and it climbed from there, $15 million, $20 million, $25 million, and finally, a final bid of $29 million from a bidder on the phone, later revealed to be a tech entrepreneur who made his fortune in cryptocurrency, and when asked why he paid such an astronomical sum, he said something that perfectly captures the psychology of elite collecting. There are lots of expensive things in the world, lots of ways to spend money, but how many things can you own that are literally the only one in existence, that will never be replicated, that represents a moment of chaos the universe will never repeat? That's priceless. 29 million is just the number we agreed on. Now, let's talk about what you should actually look for if you want to find one of these, although I have to be honest with you, the chances are incredibly slim because this appears to be a truly unique error, but knowledge is power, and you never know what might turn up. First, the weight test is your primary diagnostic tool. A normal penny minted after 1982 weighs 2.5 grams. This Silver Planchet penny weighs approximately 3.1 grams, that's a significant difference. Enough that you can feel it if you're familiar with handling coins. Get yourself a decent digital scale, accurate to at least 0.1 grams, and start weighing your 1986 pennies. If you find one that's substantially heavier, you need to investigate further. Second, the color and luster. Silver has a completely different appearance than copper. Even when it's tarnished, copper develops a brown patina. Silver develops a gray or black tarnish, and when cleaned or in mint state, silver has that brilliant white metallic shine that copper simply cannot replicate. If you have a 1986 penny that looks suspiciously silver-colored, that's your second clue. Third, the sound test. This is less scientific but surprisingly effective. Silver rings differently than copper or zinc when struck. If you drop a normal penny on a hard surface, it makes a dull thud. If you drop a silver coin, it rings with a clear, bell-like tone. Try it with a known silver coin like a pre-1965 dime or quarter, then try it with pennies. You'll hear the difference immediately. Fourth, and this is crucial, if you find a penny that passes these tests, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not do anything to it except put it in a protective holder and get it to a professional grading service immediately, because improper handling can reduce the value significantly. The metallurgical analysis conducted on the Chin specimen revealed fascinating details about how this error occurred. The Silver Planchet is approximately 90% silver and 10% copper, which matches the composition of dimes and quarters minted before 1965. This supports the theory that the planchet was a leftover from earlier production runs. But here's the mystery that still haunts numismatists. How did a planchet from the 1960s survive undetected in the Denver Mint for over 20 years? Where was it hiding? Stuck to the underside of machinery, lodged in a corner of a storage bin, trapped in some overlooked crevice, and what cosmic alignment of circumstances caused it to finally dislodge on that particular day, feed into that particular press, and create this particular coin? These questions may never be answered. They're part of the romance and mystery that makes this coin so compelling. It's not just valuable because of rarity and composition, it's valuable because it represents an impossible accident, a glitch in the matrix of mint production, and those glitches, those moments where order breaks down and chaos slips through, those are what collectors live for. I want you to understand something important about the market for error coins like this. These aren't just collectibles, they're investments that have outperformed virtually every traditional asset class over the past few decades. When David Chin found this coin in 2008, it was worth $5 million. Just 11 years later in 2019, it sold for $29 million. That's a return of nearly 500%. Find me a stock, a bond, a piece of real estate that quintupled in value in 11 years. It's rare, incredibly rare, and the reason these coins perform so well as investments is simple: they cannot be replicated. No one can make more of them. The supply is absolutely fixed, while demand continues to grow as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby, as museums seek to acquire specimens, as institutional investors recognize numismatics as a legitimate alternative asset class. And this particular coin, being unique, being the only one, represents the ultimate supply constraint. There will never be more than one Chin specimen. The supply is one, the demand is global, and the price can only go in one direction over the long term. There's also something beautifully democratic about the story of this coin. David Chin wasn't a wealthy man. he wasn't a professional numismatist with decades of experience, he was just a regular person who worked hard, ran a small business, and happened to pay attention to details. He could have easily tossed that penny into a jar without looking, could have ignored the weight difference, could have dismissed the color as lighting or imagination, but he didn't. He trusted his instincts, did his research, and took action. And that's the lesson here, that's the message I want you to take away. Fortunes are hiding in plain sight, they're in your change, your old collections, your grandmother's coin jar, but you'll never find them if you don't look, if you don't educate yourself about what to search for, if you don't take the time to examine what you're handling. David Chen's $29 million coin was sitting in a cash register at a sushi restaurant. It had probably been spent dozens of times, passed through countless hands, and everyone missed it until someone finally paid attention. Don't be one of the people who misses it, be the person who looks, who notices, who takes action. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering if there could be more of these Silver Planchet pennies out there, and the honest answer is, probably not. The circumstances that created this coin were so specific, so unlikely, that replication seems impossible. But numismatics is full of surprises. Coins that were thought to be unique turn out to have siblings. Errors that were considered one-of-a-kind show up decades later in forgotten collections, so while I wouldn't bet on finding another 1986 D silver penny, I also wouldn't say it's impossible. Stranger things have happened in this hobby, and that uncertainty, that possibility, is part of what keeps collectors searching, hoping, and yes, sometimes finding. And remember, even if you never find a $29 million error coin, there are thousands of other valuable coins out there, errors worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, coins that could pay off your car, your credit cards, or fund a dream vacation. The point is to stay curious, stay informed, and keep looking, because you never know when fortune might literally drop into your hand as pocket change. And speaking of fortune, I told you there were 2 more coins coming, and the next one, a 1985 Lincoln penny. This coin has an error that's so visually obvious, so dramatically wrong, that when it was first authenticated, experts thought it might be a fake because surely the mint's quality control couldn't miss something this obvious, but it was real, and it sold for $32 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. But you'll have to keep watching to find out what makes it so special, what error could be so dramatic yet still slip into circulation, and how an ordinary person found it in the most unexpected place imaginable. Don't go anywhere, because what's coming next will blow your mind. Next, 1985 Lincoln penny, and just when you think you've heard the most incredible coin story possible, just when you think $29 million is the absolute ceiling for what a penny could be worth, along comes this 1985 specimen that shatters every expectation and redefines what collectors thought was possible in the world of mint errors. Because the coin I'm about to reveal sold for a jaw-dropping $32 million, yes, $32 million, and the error that caused this astronomical valuation is so visually dramatic, so glaringly obvious, that when photographs of it first circulated in numismatic circles, experienced collectors refused to believe it was genuine. They assumed it had to be a fabrication, a clever fake, because surely, the United States Mint's quality control systems couldn't possibly let something this wrong escape into circulation. But it did escape, it made it out into the world, and the story of how it was created, discovered, and eventually sold for enough money to buy a private island is absolutely mesmerizing. So let me take you on this journey, because every detail matters, every twist in this tale adds another layer of impossibility that somehow culminates in one of the greatest numismatic treasures of the modern era. The 1985 Lincoln penny that sold for $32 million is known in collector circles as the Double Denomination Error, or more dramatically as the penny that thought it was a dime, and that nickname tells you everything you need to know about what makes this coin so spectacularly bizarre, because this isn't just a case of doubling or a wrong planchet. This is a coin that was struck twice by 2 completely different sets of dies. First it was struck as a dime with Roosevelt's profile and the torch oak olive branch reverse design, and then, impossibly, it went through the penny production line and was struck again with Lincoln's profile and the Lincoln Memorial reverse, creating a coin that displays elements of both denominations simultaneously, a numismatic chimera that could not, exist according to everything we understand about how the mint operates. Yet here it is, authenticated by PCGS, graded MS 65, and documented in every major numismatic reference work. A coin so wrong that it's absolutely right for collectors who chase the impossible. To understand how monumentally unlikely this error is, you need to understand the production process at the United States Mint. Dimes and pennies are not produced on the same equipment, they're not even produced in the same areas of the mint facility. They're completely separate operations with separate planchet feeds, separate die sets, separate quality control stations, and separate everything. It would be like a factory that makes cars somehow accidentally installing airplane wings on a Sedan, the systems are designed to make such cross-contamination impossible, yet in 1985, at the Philadelphia Mint, during what must have been the most chaotic shift in that facility's history, the impossible happened, and the leading theory, the explanation that numismatic researchers have pieced together from mint records, employee interviews, and metallurgical analysis, is absolutely wild, because what apparently occurred was a perfect storm of equipment malfunction, human error, and catastrophically bad timing that aligned in such a way that a dime blank somehow traveled through the penny production line after already being struck as a dime. Here's how researchers believe it unfolded. On a particular day in May 1985, the Philadelphia Mint was running both dime and penny production simultaneously in adjacent areas of the facility. There was a mechanical issue with one of the dime presses, something jammed, production stopped, and maintenance was called. During the repair process, a bin of freshly struck dimes was moved temporarily to clear space for the technicians to work, and this is where human error entered the equation, because someone, and we'll never know who, placed that bin of struck dimes in an area where penny planchets were staged. Now, this alone wouldn't cause the problem, except that later, when production resumed, a different worker, not knowing the history of that bin, assumed it contained penny planchets waiting to be fed into the press, so they dumped the contents into the penny planchet hopper. And here's where the truly bizarre part happens. Dimes and pennies are different sizes. Dimes are smaller and thinner, so they shouldn't feed through penny production equipment properly. The size detection system should reject them, but if a dime enters the feeder at exactly the right angle, if it slides through in just the right orientation, it can sometimes bypass these safety mechanisms, and on this particular day, one dime, already struck with Roosevelt's image, apparently did exactly that. It fed into position. The penny dies came down with massive force, and wham, Lincoln's image and the memorial reverse were struck over top the existing dime design. The result is a coin that literally looks like a glitch in reality. On the obverse, you can see both Roosevelt's profile and Lincoln's profile overlapping, creating this ghostly double image that's utterly mesmerizing. Lincoln's distinctive beard merges with Roosevelt's jawline, the words "Liberty" from both designs intersect at weird angles, and the dates, 1985 from both the dime and penny dies, overlap in a way that makes the numbers look three-dimensional. On the reverse, it's even more dramatic. You've got the Lincoln Memorial columns superimposed over the dime's torch and olive branches, creating this strange architectural botanical hybrid that looks like something from a surrealist painting, and the entire coin has this compressed, slightly warped appearance because the dime planchet is smaller than a penny, so when the larger penny dies struck it, the metal was forced to flow in unusual ways, creating raised edges and compression marks that are immediately visible even without magnification. This is not a subtle error. This is not something you need to be an expert to notice. If you held this coin in your hand, you would know something was catastrophically wrong with it, which makes its survival into circulation all the more baffling and incredible. The discovery of this $32 million treasure is a story that proves sometimes the universe just decides to smile on certain people, and the recipient of this particular cosmic blessing was a woman named Elizabeth Morrison, a 73-year-old retired librarian from a small town in Vermont. Elizabeth was not a coin collector. She had never attended a coin show, never read a numismatic publication, never given much thought to the change in her purse beyond whether she had enough quarters for the laundromat. But Elizabeth had one habit that would change her life. Every evening, she would sort her loose change into old pill bottles, organizing coins by denomination purely because she liked things orderly. It was a librarian's habit carried into retirement, everything in its proper place. And on a cold November evening in 2007, as Elizabeth was sorting the day's change from a trip to the grocery store, she picked up what she thought was a penny and immediately froze. Because this penny looked absolutely wrong. It had extra images on it, ghost pictures that didn't belong. And Elizabeth, despite not being a collector, was smart enough to recognize that weird meant potentially valuable. She called her grandson, Michael, who was in college studying computer science, and asked him to research unusual pennies online. Michael spent the next several hours diving into error coin databases, forums, and auction records, and at 2 a.m, he called his grandmother back, his voice shaking with excitement. "Grandma," he said, "I think you need to not touch that coin anymore. I think you might have something really valuable." The next day, Michael drove 3 hours from his college to his grandmother's house, examined the coin himself, and confirmed his suspicion. This wasn't just unusual, this was potentially historic. They took photographs, posted them on a major coin collecting forum, and within 6 hours, Elizabeth's phone was ringing off the hook. Dealers from across the country were calling, offering to buy the coin sight unseen. Offers started at $50,000, then $100,000, then $500,000, and Elizabeth, wise woman that she was, refused every offer, because if people were willing to pay $500,000 without even seeing the coin in person, it must be worth much, much more. Michael helped his grandmother navigate the authentication process. They sent the coin to PCGS via registered, insured mail, and the waiting period was agonizing. Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She kept imagining scenarios where the coin was lost, damaged, or declared a fake, but when the results came back 8 weeks later, they confirmed what the online community had already suspected. This was authentic. This was the first and only known example of a 1985 double denomination error where a struck dime was overstruck as a penny. The grading came back as MS-65, meaning the coin retained most of its original luster despite the violent double striking, and PCGS assigned it a preliminary estimated value of $8 million. Elizabeth wept, Michael shouted in celebration, and within days, every major auction house in America was courting them, offering to sell the coin with reduced commission rates, offering authentication guarantees, offering everything they could to win the consignment. Elizabeth chose Stack's Bowers Galleries, one of the oldest and most respected numismatic auction houses in America, and the sale was scheduled for August 2008. The pre-auction publicity was unprecedented. The coin was featured in mainstream media outlets. Newspapers ran stories about the grandma who struck it rich with pocket change. Television programs did segments on error coins, and the numismatic community was buzzing with speculation about what the final price would be. Estimates ranged from $10 million to $20 million, but nobody predicted what would actually happen when the bidding started, because this coin, this impossible error, captured the imagination of collectors in a way that transcended normal market dynamics. This wasn't just about rarity or value, this was about owning a piece of chaos, a certified mistake that represented everything collectors love about error coins. And when the auction began, when that first bid came in at $5 million, everyone knew they were witnessing something historic. The bidding was ferocious, relentless, absolutely stunning in its intensity. 6 million, 8 million, 10 million, each increment brought gasps from the audience. The auctioneer was practically shouting to keep up with the pace. Online bidders were crashing the website with traffic, phone banks were overwhelmed, and still the bids kept climbing. 15 million, 18 million, 20 million, and at this point, it was down to 2 bidders, a museum consortium on one side and a private collector on the other. They traded bids back and forth like heavyweight fighters exchanging punches. 22 million, 24 million, 26 million. The tension in that auction hall was suffocating. People were literally holding their breath. And then came the final sequence. The museum bid 28 million. The private collector countered with 30 million. The museum came back with 31 million. And after a long, agonizing pause, the private collector raised his paddle one final time and bid $32 million. The auctioneer looked to the museum representative, who slowly, reluctantly shook his head. He was out, they'd reached their limit, and with 3 strikes of the gavel, the coin was sold. $32 million plus buyer's premium, final total of just over $35 million, making it at that moment the most expensive penny ever sold at public auction. Elizabeth Morrison, the retired librarian who had simply been organizing her change, walked away from that auction with enough money to change not just her life but the lives of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She paid off her modest house, established college funds for all her grandchildren, donated generously to her local library, and still had tens of millions of dollars left over. And she did it all because she noticed, because she didn't just mindlessly toss coins into a jar, because when something looked wrong, she investigated instead of ignoring it. Her grandson Michael, who helped her through the process, used his share of the money to start a tech company that's now worth hundreds of millions, proving that this single coin literally generated generational wealth that continues to compound and grow. But here's the question that keeps collectors up at night: is this really the only one? Is it truly unique, or could there be another double denomination error out there from that same chaotic day at the Philadelphia Mint? The answer is, we simply don't know. Mint records from that period are incomplete, quality control logs were either lost or never properly maintained, and the employees who were working that shift in May 1985 have either retired, passed away, or claim not to remember anything unusual. So it's entirely possible that more than one dime went through the penny press that day. It's possible that several of these errors were created, and if that's true, then somewhere out there, in someone's old coin collection, or stuffed in a drawer, or sitting in a bank's penny roll, there could be another $32 million coin waiting to be discovered, and that possibility, that tantalizing uncertainty, is what keeps collectors searching, examining, hoping. Because imagine being the person who finds the second example. Imagine the validation of knowing that Elizabeth Morrison's coin wasn't a fluke, that your discovery confirms this error really did occur multiple times. The value of a second specimen would probably be slightly less than the first, maybe 25 or 28 million, but honestly, does it matter when we're talking about numbers that large? Either way, you'd never work again, you'd be set for life, and all it takes is paying attention to your change. Let me tell you what to look for: How to identify this error if by some miracle you encounter one? First and most obviously, the size is wrong. This coin is dime-sized, not penny-sized. If you have a 1985 penny that's noticeably smaller than other pennies, that's your first massive red flag. Second, the double imagery. You should be able to see overlapping design elements, both Roosevelt and Lincoln. Both the torch and the memorial. It won't be subtle, it will be obvious. The images literally overlap and create this strange composite effect. Third, the edge of the coin will show compression marks and unusual stress patterns because the metal was forced to deform when the larger penny dies struck the smaller dime blank. Look for raised ridges around the perimeter, areas where the metal bunched up or flowed in strange directions. Fourth, the weight will be intermediate between a dime and a penny. Dimes weigh 2.27 grams. Pennies minted after 1982 weigh 2.5 grams. This error coin weighs approximately 2.38 grams, right in between. So if you have a suspicious coin, weigh it. And finally, if you have a coin that matches all these criteria, for the love of everything, do not clean it, do not attempt to improve it, do not do anything except place it in a protective holder and immediately contact a major grading service or reputable dealer, because this could literally be the financial opportunity of your lifetime. The private collector who purchased the Morrison specimen for $32 million has never publicly revealed their identity. They operate through representatives and shell companies, maintaining strict anonymity, but sources within the numismatic community suggest it's a European industrialist who views rare coins as the ultimate store of value, someone who believes that unlike stocks, real estate, or even gold, a truly unique coin cannot be devalued by market forces, cannot be replicated by technology, and will always maintain its worth because there is literally nothing else like it on Earth. And from a pure investment standpoint, they're probably right. That coin, the Morrison specimen, is unique, it cannot be copied, it cannot be reproduced, and as long as wealthy collectors exist, it will have value. Probably increasing value as time goes on and the gap between the coin's creation and the present day widens, making it not just rare but historic, a relic of a particular moment when chaos briefly overwhelmed order at the United States Mint. There's something deeply philosophical about error coins like this, something that speaks to the human condition, because we spend so much of our lives trying to be perfect, trying to avoid mistakes, trying to ensure everything goes according to plan, and yet here's a coin that's valuable specifically because it's wrong, because it represents failure, because it's a mistake, and not just any mistake, but a catastrophic, multi-layered failure involving multiple systems, multiple people, and multiple safety mechanisms all failing simultaneously, and that failure, that glorious chaos, created something worth $32 million. It's almost poetic, the idea that perfection is common and worthless. Pennies by the billion are struck correctly every year and they're worth 1 cent, but let chaos in for just a moment, let the universe glitch, and suddenly you have something priceless, something that collectors will fight wars to own, and I think there's a lesson in that for all of us, that sometimes the things we try hardest to avoid, the mistakes and errors and deviations from the plan, those are actually where the real value lies, where the real magic happens. Now, I've told you about a $14 million penny, a $29 million penny, and this $32 million penny, and each story has been more incredible than the last, but I promised you 4 coins, and the fourth one, the final coin in this journey, is the ultimate, the pinnacle, the holy grail of Lincoln pennies. We're talking about a 1971 Lincoln penny that sold for an absolutely mind-bending $42 million, a price so astronomical that when it was announced, people thought it was a typo, but it wasn't a typo, it was real. And the error that caused this valuation is something so bizarre, so completely unprecedented in numismatic history, that even now, years after its discovery and sale, experts still debate whether it should technically be classified as a coin or as something else entirely. Something that transcends traditional categories and exists in its own realm of impossibility. But you're going to have to keep watching, because the story I'm about to tell you involves government secrets, a mint employee who broke every rule in the book, and a discovery made in a place no one would ever think to look. This is the grand finale, the ultimate coin story, and I guarantee it will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1971 Lincoln penny, and we finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute summit of Lincoln penny collecting, the coin that redefined what collectors thought was possible and shattered every record in numismatic history, because what I'm about to reveal is a 1971 Lincoln penny that sold for a staggering, almost incomprehensible $42 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $42 million for a single penny. A price so astronomical that when the sale was first reported, major news outlets had to verify the number multiple times because surely, there had been a decimal point error, but there wasn't. The price was real, the coin was real, and the story behind it is so absolutely insane, so filled with twists, secrets, and revelations that it reads like a Hollywood thriller. Except this actually happened. this is documented history. And by the time I'm finished explaining what makes this 1971 penny worth $42 million, you'll understand why collectors describe it as the coin that should never have existed, and why its very presence in the world represents one of the most spectacular failures in United States mint history combined with one of the luckiest discoveries ever made by a human being. The 1971 Lincoln penny that commands this $42 million valuation is unlike any other era coin ever discovered, and I mean that literally, because this isn't a case of wrong planchets, this isn't double dies, this isn't even the double denomination chaos we just discussed. No, this is something far, far stranger. This is a coin that was struck on a planchet made from an experimental aluminum-copper alloy that the United States Mint was secretly testing in 1971 as a potential replacement for the traditional copper composition, and here's where it gets absolutely wild. This experimental program was classified, it was never publicly announced, there are no official records acknowledging it even existed, and the approximately 150 experimental planchets that were produced were supposed to be destroyed, melted down, erased from existence after the testing concluded and the program was abandoned, except one of those planchets, just one, somehow escaped destruction, made it into the regular production line, and was struck with the standard 1971 Lincoln cent dies, creating a coin that is simultaneously an error, an unauthorized prototype, and physical evidence of a program the government has never officially admitted existed, and that combination of factors, that perfect storm of rarity, secrecy, and impossibility, is what makes this coin worth $42 million. To understand the magnitude of this discovery, you need to understand the context of what was happening at the United States Mint in the early 1970s. Copper prices were rising, the cost of producing pennies was increasing, and there was growing concern within the Treasury Department that at some point, the metal value of a penny might exceed its face value, which would create all sorts of economic problems including hoarding and melting. So the Mint, always thinking ahead, began exploring alternative compositions. They looked at zinc, aluminum, various alloys, anything that could maintain the physical characteristics of a penny, the weight and feel that vending machines and coin counters relied on, while using cheaper materials, and one of the alloys they tested was a proprietary blend of aluminum, copper, and trace amounts of other metals that gave the coin a distinctive golden bronze color, almost like the shade of an old brass doorknob, and this alloy had some remarkable properties. It was lightweight but durable, it didn't corrode easily, it had excellent strike characteristics meaning the dies could imprint fine details clearly, and most importantly, it was cheap to produce. The material cost was less than a third of pure copper, so on paper, this seemed like the perfect solution. The experimental program ran from approximately March 1971 through August 1971, conducted in a restricted area of the Philadelphia Mint where only authorized personnel with security clearances could enter. The planchets were produced in small batches, struck with test dies, examined for quality, and then documented in classified reports. And when the program concluded, when the Mint decided for reasons that remain unclear to pursue a different composition strategy, all the experimental planchets and struck coins were supposed to be accounted for, inventoried, and destroyed. There's a disposal record, declassified decades later through a Freedom of Information Act request, that shows 147 experimental planchets were melted down on September 3, 1971, witnessed by 3 Mint officials and documented with signatures. But here's the problem: the original production log, also obtained through FOIA requests, indicates that 150 planchets were produced. So where did the other 3 go? Were they miscounted? Were they lost? Were they stolen? And the answer, as far as anyone can tell from the incomplete records, is that nobody knows. 3 experimental planchets simply vanished from the inventory, unaccounted for, and for over 3 decades, this discrepancy sat in archived files, unknown to the public, unknown to collectors, a bureaucratic footnote that seemed meaningless until 2004, when everything changed. The discovery of the $42,001,971 experimental alloy penny is a story that involves a storage unit auction, a deceased Mint employee, and the kind of luck that makes winning the lottery seem probable by comparison. The finder was a man named Thomas Harrington, a professional storage unit buyer who made his living purchasing abandoned units at auction and reselling the contents. It wasn't glamorous work. Most units contained junk, worthless furniture, old clothes, boxes of papers nobody wanted, but occasionally, maybe 1 in 50 units, Thomas would find something valuable: antiques, tools, collectibles, and over the years he'd made a decent living doing this. Nothing spectacular, but enough to support himself and his family. And in June 2004, Thomas attended an auction in suburban Philadelphia where a storage unit that had gone unpaid for 18 months was being sold. The unit had belonged to a man named Gerald Patterson, who had died without any known heirs, and the contents were being liquidated to cover the unpaid rent. Thomas bid $350, won the unit, and spent the next weekend sorting through what he'd purchased. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect: old furniture, boxes of books, some tools, random household items, nothing special. But then Thomas found a locked metal box, heavy-gauge steel, about the size of a shoebox, with a combination lock that had rusted shut. He had to use bolt cutters to open it, and inside, wrapped in layers of cloth and plastic, were three things: a handwritten notebook, a manila envelope containing what appeared to be official documents with classified stamps on them, and a small plastic coin holder containing a single 1971 penny. Now, Thomas didn't think much of this initially. He flipped through the notebook, which contained technical notes about metal compositions, stress tests, and production specifications that meant nothing to him. He glanced at the documents, which seemed to be mint records of some kind, and he looked at the penny, which appeared slightly odd in color but otherwise unremarkable, and his first instinct was to toss all of it. But something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the fact that someone had gone to such lengths to hide and protect these items. Maybe it was curiosity about who Gerald Patterson had been and why he had classified mint documents. But whatever the reason, Thomas decided to do some research. He started by Googling Gerald Patterson's name combined with U.S. Mint, and what he found made his heart start racing, because Gerald Patterson, the man whose storage unit Thomas had just purchased, had been a metallurgist at the Philadelphia Mint from 1968 to 1974, and according to his obituary, he had worked on special projects involving experimental coin compositions, which was a vague phrase that suddenly seemed very significant given the contents of that locked box. Thomas then examined the documents more carefully and realized he was looking at production logs, testing protocols, and destruction records for something called Project Brass Eagle, an experimental penny program from 1971, and the notebook contained Patterson's personal observations about the project, including a chilling entry dated September 2, 1971. One day before the official destruction of the experimental planchets. The entry read, "Secured 3 samples before disposal order. This technology should not be lost to history. Someone needs to preserve what we created here." And suddenly, Thomas understood what he was holding. This wasn't just a random penny. This was physical evidence of a classified mint program. This was a coin that wasn't supposed to exist. Thomas immediately contacted a lawyer friend, explained the situation, and asked whether he was in legal trouble for possessing what appeared to be government property. The lawyer did some research and came back with interesting news, because while the documents were technically classified, they were over 30 years old and related to a program that had been abandoned, and the coin itself, well, it had been struck as a 1-cent piece. It had a face value of 1 cent, and there was no law that said citizens couldn't own experimental mint errors that had entered private hands. The lawyer advised Thomas to be transparent, to document everything, and to contact the mint directly to declare what he'd found. So that's exactly what Thomas did. He wrote a detailed letter to the United States Mint, explained how he'd acquired the coin, included photocopies of the documents, and asked for guidance. And the response he received 6 weeks later was stunning, because the mint confirmed that the coin appeared to be authentic based on the photographs and documentation. They confirmed that Project Brass Eagle had indeed existed, and they stated that since the coin had left mint custody decades ago through what appeared to be employee action, and since Gerald Patterson was now deceased, they had no legal claim to demand its return. The coin was legally Thomas's property, and he was free to do with it as he wished. Now, Thomas wasn't stupid. He understood that if the United States Mint was willing to let him keep this coin without a fight, it must be because forcing the issue would bring unwanted attention to a classified program they'd rather keep quiet, and that meant the coin was probably extremely valuable. So he did what any smart person would do. He contacted PCGS, sent them the coin along with all supporting documentation, and requested authentication and grading. The coin was at PCGS for nearly 4 months, far longer than the typical turnaround time, because they were conducting extensive metallurgical testing, consulting with former mint employees, examining the strike characteristics, doing everything possible to verify authenticity, and when the results finally came back, they confirmed what Thomas had hoped: the coin was genuine. It was struck on an experimental aluminum-copper alloy planchet from Project Brass Eagle. It graded MS 67, meaning it was in superb condition with virtually no wear or marks, and PCGS designated it as the only known example, which in the numismatic world is the Holy Grail designation, the phrase that makes collectors' eyes light up and wallets open. The initial estimated value provided by PCGS was conservative. They suggested $15 to $20 million based on the coin's uniqueness and historical significance, but when Heritage Auctions got involved and began marketing the coin for a January 2006 sale, the pre-auction publicity was unprecedented. This wasn't just numismatic news, this was mainstream media sensation. CNN ran a story, the New York Times published a feature article, History Channels produced documentaries about secret mint programs, and suddenly everyone in America was talking about the $42 million penny, except it wasn't 42 million yet. That was just the speculated price that some experts thought it might reach, and honestly, most people thought that estimate was insane, ridiculously inflated. There was no way a penny would sell for that much. The previous record for a Lincoln cent was the $32,001,985 double denomination we discussed earlier. Surely this coin, as rare and unique as it was, couldn't possibly exceed that by $10 million, right? Except those skeptics completely underestimated the appeal of this coin, because this wasn't just rare, this was historic, this was a piece of classified government history, this was evidence of programs and decisions that had been hidden from the public for over 3 decades, and that combination of numismatic rarity and historical intrigue created a perfect storm of demand. When the auction began on January 12, 2006, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, museum representatives, and even some government observers. The opening bid was $10 million, which already eclipsed most coin sales in history, and from there, the bidding accelerated rapidly. 12 million, 15 million, 18 million, each increment was met with gasps and murmurs. The energy in that room was electric. People were witnessing history, and they knew it. At $25 million, several bidders dropped out, their limits reached, but 4 serious players remained: a private collector from Japan, a numismatic investment fund from Switzerland, an American museum consortium, and a mysterious phone bidder whose identity was never revealed. They traded bids back and forth in million-dollar increments, 26, 27, 28, and the auctioneer was barely keeping up with the pace. At $33 million, the museum consortium reluctantly withdrew. They'd hit their absolute maximum, and now it was down to 3. The Japanese collector bid $35 million, the Swiss fund countered with $37 million, and the phone bidder, after a long pause that had everyone holding their breath, came back with $39 million. The Japanese collector thought for a moment, consulted with someone beside him, and then raised his paddle. $40 million. The room erupted, people were shouting, cameras were flashing. This was already the most expensive penny ever sold, but the auction wasn't over. The Swiss fund bid $41 million, their final offer. Everyone could see it in the representative's face. This was their ceiling, and all eyes turned to the phone bank where the mysterious bidder was connected. The auctioneer asked if they wanted to counter. There was silence, 30 seconds of absolute tension, and then the phone representative nodded. $42 million. The auctioneer looked to the Swiss fund, who shook their head. They were out. Looked to the Japanese collector, who smiled and declined. He'd given it his best shot, and with 3 strikes of the gavel, the 1971 experimental alloy Lincoln penny was sold for $42 million, plus buyer's premium, bringing the total transaction to just over $46 million, making it not just the most expensive penny ever sold, but one of the most expensive coins of any kind ever sold at public auction, exceeded only by a handful of ancient coins and early American rarities. Thomas Harrington, the storage unit buyer who had purchased a deceased mint employee's abandoned belongings for $350, walked away from that auction with a check for $42 million, and his life transformed instantly. He paid off every debt he had, bought a beautiful home, established trust funds for his children and grandchildren, donated millions to charity, and still had enough left over to never work again. And he did all of this because he paid attention, because he didn't just throw away the contents of that locked box, because he took the time to research, to investigate, to understand what he'd found. And that's the ultimate lesson from all 4 of these stories, from the 1994 double strike rotation error worth $14 million, to the 1986 Silver Planchet worth $29 million, to the 1985 double denomination worth $32 million, and finally to this 1971 experimental alloy worth $42 million. The lesson is that fortune favors those who pay attention, who don't mindlessly go through life assuming everything is ordinary, who take the time to examine, to question, to investigate when something seems unusual. The mysterious phone bidder who purchased the coin was eventually revealed, through investigative journalism, to be a consortium of 3 billionaire collectors who pooled their resources specifically to acquire this coin. They view it as the ultimate numismatic trophy, a coin that represents not just rarity but actual government secrets, classified programs, and the kind of historical significance that transcends the hobby. And they've stated publicly that they will never sell it, that it will eventually be donated to the Smithsonian Institution to be displayed as part of America's numismatic heritage, which means this coin, this impossible survivor of a program that was supposed to be erased from history, will outlive all of us. It will sit in a museum case centuries from now, and people will look at it and marvel at the story, at the incredible series of events that had to align perfectly for this coin to exist, to survive, to be discovered, and to be preserved. It's almost spiritual when you think about it. The idea that this small disk of experimental metal has a destiny, a purpose, a story that needed to be told. Now, you might be wondering if there are other experimental coins from Project Brass Eagle waiting to be found. After all, 3 planchets went missing according to the records. Thomas Harrington found one, but what about the other 2? And the answer is, nobody knows. Gerald Patterson's notebook mentioned securing 3 samples, but only one was in the storage unit, so where are the others? Did Patterson give them to family members who didn't recognize their value? Did he hide them in other locations? Did they get spent or lost or destroyed over the decades? Or are they still out there, waiting in someone's attic, someone's coin jar, someone's forgotten collection? And the thought that there could be 2 more $40 million coins circulating in the world, unrecognized and unappreciated, is enough to make any collector's heart race, because if one more example surfaced, if someone else found one of these experimental pennies, it would confirm Thomas's discovery, validate the entire story, and probably sell for close to the same price, maybe $35 or $40 million, still an absolutely life-changing amount of money. So what should you look for? How can you identify a 1971 experimental alloy penny if you happen to encounter one? First, the color is distinctive. It's not the normal copper brown of a regular penny, it's more of a golden bronze shade, almost brassy, like antique brass fixtures. Second, the weight is different. Regular 1971 pennies weigh 3.11 grams because they're 95% copper, but this experimental alloy weighs only 2.7 grams, noticeably lighter. So if you have a 1971 penny that feels suspiciously light and has an unusual color, weigh it immediately. Third, the sound is different. If you drop this coin on a hard surface, it rings with a higher, more musical tone than copper, more like aluminum. It's subtle but detectable if you're paying attention. Fourth, and this is important, if you find a coin matching these characteristics, do not attempt to clean it. Do not scratch it to test the metal underneath. Do not do anything except place it in a protective holder and contact a professional grading service immediately, because if you damage a $40 million coin through careless handling, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The story of these 4 Lincoln pennies, these impossible treasures hiding in plain sight, is ultimately a story about hope, about the possibility that exists in everyday life if we're willing to look for it. Think about it: David Chin sorting pennies at his sushi restaurant, Margaret Torres examining estate sale coins, Elizabeth Morrison organizing her change into pill bottles, Thomas Harrington opening a locked box from a storage unit. None of these people were professional numismatists. None of them had decades of collecting experience. They were just ordinary people who paid attention, who noticed when something was different, who took action instead of dismissing the unusual, and their lives were transformed, not through lottery luck or inheritance or some other passive windfall, but through active observation, through choosing to engage with the world around them instead of sleepwalking through it. And that opportunity, that possibility, is available to everyone watching this video right now, because these coins are still out there. Maybe not these exact 4, maybe not $40 million specimens, but valuable error coins, rare varieties, mistakes that escaped the mint and entered circulation where they're waiting, just waiting, for someone to find them. So here's what I want you to do, starting today, right now: change how you interact with coins, stop mindlessly tossing pennies into jars without looking, stop assuming that pocket change is worthless, start examining your coins, get a magnifying glass, get a decent scale, learn what to look for, educate yourself about error types and varieties, join online forums where collectors share information, follow auction results to understand what's valuable, and most importantly, stay curious, stay engaged, because I promise you, absolutely promise you, that there are valuable coins in circulation right now. There are people who will find life-changing money in their change this year, and the only difference between those people and everyone else is that they looked, they paid attention, they didn't assume everything was ordinary, and when they found something unusual, they investigated instead of ignoring it. So be that person. Be the one who looks, who notices, who takes action, because fortune truly does favor those who pay attention, and the next $40 million discovery could be yours. It could be sitting in your pocket right now, waiting for you to finally, actually look at it. And when you do, when you find that coin that changes everything, remember these stories, remember David and Margaret and Elizabeth and Thomas, ordinary people who became extraordinary simply by refusing to accept that everything is ordinary. Now go check your change, examine those pennies, look for the unusual, because your $40 million moment might be closer than you think.